Good morning. My name is Bobby Albano with California Curb Appeal, and today we're going to have our training on the second half of the residential purchase agreement. Last week we went through the first half, and today we will be completing that document and with the second half. Okay, let's get started. All right, let me go ahead and pull up the form in question. Bear with me. So, the residential purchase agreement just went through a modification. And like I said last week, I just love the changes that they made. What they did is they just organized it a little bit different and put all the contract terms in one place in a tabular form so that they would be easy to see and easy to compare one contract against another. Sometimes when I had a lot of offers, and there's been times when we really did have, over 50 offers, we would have to translate those to a Excel spreadsheet and have all the terms kind of listed so that we could make a comparison because it was really difficult to kind of pick those out. That worked fine, of course, but this new format really does help out a lot. So here we go. I'm just pulling this bad boy up, and then we're going to go ahead and share the screen. All righty now. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with y'all. Let's see which one. There it is. Okay, there we go. Okay, so you should be able to see the residential purchase agreement. Like I said, we talked about half of it last week, and this week we're just going to go ahead and finish up this discussion. Okay. And remember, I said that when you pull up the form in zip forms, you are not pulling up a form. You're pulling up a form packet because this contract references other disclosures and documents. We have to include them. And what CAR has done, California Association of Realtors, is they've put together the forms that need to be together in a packet so to make it easier on everyone. So very nice touch. Okay, so I believe we were on page, yes. So we finished up page 2. We're going to start on page 3. All right. So if you're looking at, go ahead and look at the screen. I have it up on my screen here. I'm just going to go ahead and make it a little bigger, zoom in. Let's go ahead and zoom in again. Okay. All right. So the section that we're going to start with is the items that are included and excluded. Okay. So this is going to take a little bit of knowledge of that walkthrough you did on this property. And when you're doing your walkthrough, it might be a good idea to have these items maybe on a piece of paper or, where you can make notes about, what is included. Because I know if I've toured 5 or 6 houses, I can't remember if in this one there was a refrigerator or what kind of stove it was. So make yourself some notes so that when you do write the offer, it's written as accurately as possible. I know sometimes, there's some back and forth, but we can't always count on that. You might submit an offer that's accepted right away. So in that case, you want to have it right the first time. So these are the items that are included. Now, you're going to mark the ones that your buyer wants. There may be a refrigerator there, but your buyer may have said, you know what, mine's better. I really don't want this. So you want to exclude that item. Okay, so that the sellers know that they're supposed to remove it. Okay, so we're gonna just go down the list. We have a stove oven combo. We have refrigerator. We have a wine refrigerator, washer, dryer, dishwasher, microwave. Now, remember in principles of real estate, when we're talking about fixtures, those are items that are attached to the improvement itself. So if we're talking about a microwave, it's a microwave that's been installed so that you can't just pick it up and walk it out the door. If there's a microwave on the counter, that's personal property because they can simply take it and walk away with it. If the microwave needs to have some screws removed to get it out, then that now becomes a fixture. Okay, so mark down just exactly what your buyer would like to include. If it is a fixture, I recommend taking it because you don't want to. I don't know. I guess it depends on the item, but it's probably easier for the seller to just leave it if it's a fixture. All right. And on the second row or second column, you see this video doorbell. That's something that's fairly new with the popularity of Ring video doorbells and other brands. Back when they first started coming out, we didn't think about it. And the buyer would assume that the video doorbell comes with the property. And then when they go to do their move in or their final walkthrough, the doorbell's gone. So that's something we need to decide on beforehand. The reason that this has a little bit of controversy is because to determine whether an item is a fixture or personal property has to do with a few things. If you remember back from real estate, principles of real estate, it depends on the way it's affixed to the improvement, the way that you interact with it. So with a video doorbell, you have an app on your phone. So that kind of says that that's personal property. However, it's screwed into the improvement, maybe on the door itself or on the door frame. So because of those possible controversies, we really need to determine upfront who's going to have it. Is it going to be the buyer or will the seller take it with them? So if your buyer wants it, please be sure and check this box. Okay. So same thing with video camera equipment, security systems, and that sort of thing. Then we have the smart home control devices, wall mounted brackets, or video or audio equipment. A lot of times you'll see the TV mount all installed where you can't see the cords, and it's very nice. So, you know, if you see something like that, you want to make sure that your buyer checks, or you check this box on behalf of your buyer, so that nice little setup stays. Okay, above ground pools, spas, bathroom mirrors. Now, this is also a little bit fairly new. Bathroom mirrors used to be a fixture, but now you can go into Home Goods or any kind of store like that, and you can buy these decorative mirrors and just hang them like you would a picture with a screw, and then they have like the little hook on the back. You just hang them. So they're like a picture where you can just simply take it off the wall. So since those have become popular, we want to really call out who's going to take the bathroom mirror. Now, you notice here that it is, let's see, yeah, we can't even uncheck it. So unless excluded below. So it's assumed that you would get the bathroom mirror unless you exclude it below. So let's see what else we have. Electric car charging system, again, you know, becoming real popular. And the, I can't see what that is. I can't read that. Oh my gosh. Let me make it a little bigger. Potted trees or shrubs. Okay. So if I were you, or if I were me, I would simply copy this page right here. Take it with me on all my walkthroughs when we're touring homes. If you feel like your buyer's getting pretty close to making an offer, and just kind of mark it down, and you can even use it as a way to um, talk to your client. You can say, okay, if we did make an offer, would you want to keep the stove? And really get them to thinking about them being in this property. So it's a really good technique to continue the conversation with your client, and it's a way to have an accurate offer when that time comes. Okay, excluded items. Now these are things that your buyer does not want. So um, like I said, if there is a refrigerator there but they do not want it, let's go ahead and exclude it. If it's personal property, there is no reason to exclude it because all personal property should be removed at the time of your final walkthrough. All right, allocation of costs. All right, okay, so we're going to start with this section is just really saying who's going to pay for what. Typically, and the rule of thumb is if you ask for it, you pay for it. Or if you receive the report for it, you pay for it. And same goes for if you paid for the report, you get the report. You can't get a report that you didn't pay for unless they decide to give it to you. You have no right to it. So if you pay for it, you get it. The only exception would be the natural hazard zone disclosure report, including tax information. So in the purchase contract, I think over here 10A and 11A, it does say that the seller is to disclose to the buyer which hazard zones the property is currently residing in. In other words, if we're in a high fire hazard zone, then that has to be disclosed to any buyer. Now, the seller has a couple of different ways that they can go about getting this information for the buyer. It doesn't really call out any one method of getting this information. The seller could go down to the county office and pull the maps for fire, flood, earthquake, seismic activity, and check every single current map and then tell you or write it down which hazard zones the property resides in. And he could do that for fairly no money at all. There's no money to get those maps. But to make it easy on the seller, a lot of companies will offer to do that for you. And it's sometimes it's called the NHD Natural Hazard Report. Goes by a few different names, but for around $99, the seller can just simply buy this report and provide it to the buyer. That is the preferred method because if the seller were to look at the maps and maybe he grabbed an old map and not the most current map and gave incorrect information, then he could be liable for any damages that were to cause. So by buying the report, he is saving himself that additional liability. And for $99, why wouldn't you, honestly? So who's going to pay for the report? Now, we have some, regionally, there are some traditional ways that these are paid for. In other words, if you're in Northern California, it's typical that the buyer pays for some things, whereas in Southern California, it's typical that the seller would pay. So we go by region, what is common in our region. So in our region, because this is something the seller is responsible to disclose to the buyer, it makes sense that the seller would pay for it. If you wanted to strengthen your offer and you wanted to offer to pay for some of these reports, you certainly could. It's just not typical, and somebody might make a mistake making assumptions, if it's not kind of the usual way people do things. Excuse me. All righty. So you're just going to check seller on this one. And then do we want the environmental or do we want something other? Now you see here, you can include the tax information as well. And this is actually calling out the tax information. So you would simply order this report if you were the seller, and that would satisfy this item. I think these are different options. I don't know. You could look up NHD and see if, these are extra add-ons, I believe. But typically I don't ask for those. But I'll find out about them anyway. All right. So who's going to provide the NHD report? So you can check this box if you work with a rep that you prefer to work with. You can designate this certain provider, and these are all different providers of that report. Actually, this my NHD best value, it actually is the best value. I think it's like $94 or something like that. It's very inexpensive to buy. So you don't have to designate somebody in particular for the seller to buy it from, but you can. You have that option. All right. Now, these next two items, if your buyer is asking for a particular report, this is a place where they can call out that report and assign a person to pay for it. Okay. So like, for instance, if there's a pool on this property, you may want a pool company to come out and give a pool report to let you know, or your buyer know, if the property's pool system is functioning properly, or if there are some problems with it, if there's parts that need to be replaced. You can actually ask for the seller to purchase that. Or if your buyer is willing to pay for it themselves, then just check buyer. What this does do, though, it does let the seller know that you're going to be performing that type of report, which, just puts them on notice that, hey, we're going to be doing this inspection and we're going to get this report. Another type of report that you might see is the septic certification, where a plumber or some sort of septic company will come out, pump the septic tank, and certify the septic system so that your buyer is aware of the condition of the septic system. That is always recommended whenever your buyer is buying a property with a septic system. It's very important because those are very expensive repairs if you don't. All right, then it goes down: smoke alarms, CO2 detectors, water heater bracing. So who's going to pay for that inspection? Most of the time, these are in the appraisal. So you can either check the box buyer and then just it'll come out in the appraisal report, or you can just check seller. And if you check seller, then the seller will probably go in themselves and do their own inspection to make sure that the number of smoke alarms, CO2 detectors are proper, and that the water heater is braced, and code requires 2 braces on the water heater because of our earthquake situation here in California. Excuse me one second. Okay. The next one: government required point of sale inspections or reports. Now, in some areas and on some types of properties, the government is required to do an inspection. On typical residential, we won't see that very often. So if it does not apply, simply leave it blank. You won't check any boxes, you'll just leave it. Same with the government required point of sale corrective remedial actions. Um, Sometimes on commercial properties, you'll need to see that the seismic retrofitting has been done. Not so much on residential again. So if there's no government agency that needs to do the corrective action, then just simply leave this blank. All right, next one, escrow fee. Now, again, in our region, it is very typical that the buyer and seller would each pay their own escrow fees. The buyer's escrow fee and the seller's escrow fee are different. They each have their own fee. So this is something new that's in this RPA. They actually added a box that says each to pay their own fees. That was not on there before, and we had to write it in. I guess they took some input from the agents, and the agents, let them know this is what we usually put. So they added this box so that we could simply check the box. Now, you as the buyer, you have the right or the option to ask for a particular escrow holder. Most of the time, I put that the seller can have their choice, and that just makes the offer a little bit stronger than if you called out a particular escrow holder. So you absolutely can, but they may not accept that part of the contract, but you definitely have the right to ask. Same with the owner's title insurance policy. The owner's title insurance policy is a protection for the seller. It's not a protection for anyone else. So in our region, typically that cost falls on the seller. Also, you can call out the company and the representative if you like, but most sellers will want to retain that choice for themselves, especially if they're paying for it. The title insurance policy covers the seller for the life of the buyer's ownership. So at any point, if someone were to come back to the property and say, look, there's a lien on this property. Well, that could, that if there's an active title policy on the property, the title insurance will cover that. So that's protection for the seller. All right, buyer's lender title insurance policy. So this is a different type of title insurance. It's a lender title insurance policy. It says, unless otherwise agreed, buyer shall purchase any title insurance policy insuring buyer's lender. So sometimes I've seen where your buyer will have a lender, and that lender will require there to be an additional policy. If the lender is requiring that, then the buyer should pay for it. And that's exactly what this contract is stating. All right, next item, county transfer tax and fees. The next one, I'm just going to go ahead, city transfer tax and fees. Now, in our county, San Bernardino and Riverside, our cities do not have a transfer tax, just the county. So, and in our region, it's typical for the seller to pay for that transfer tax. So you can strengthen the offer again by offering to pay for it as the buyer's agent, or you can simply just check the box that says seller. You may want to check your city to make sure that, they're not charging a transfer tax. Last time I checked, none of the cities in either county were charging a transfer tax, but you never know. It could change at any moment. So you probably want to check that before you just leave this blank. All right. Next item, HOA fee for property disclosures. Now, if your property that you're placing an offer on exists in a homeowners association area, if there's an HOA fee, then it's on the seller to provide all the disclosures from the HOA, the association. There are there's a cost to that. Most HOAs charge anywhere between $300 and $600 to get those disclosures. What's included in the disclosures are everything the buyer would need to know about the HOA before they commit to living within that HOA's jurisdiction. The CC&Rs, covenants, conditions, and restrictions of the title. The CC&Rs are going to tell the buyer what restrictions are going to be on them as far as the property goes. Are they going to be able to paint the property any color they want? Probably not. Are they going to have to maintain their exterior in a certain manner? Probably will. So we want to let the buyer know, or the buyer needs to know what restrictions they're going to be under before they, finish the transaction. It's really important as an agent that you encourage your buyer to look at these. I can't tell you how many times that I've talked to new buyers that had no idea what it meant to be part of an HOA. They had to be educated from the ground up. So the CC&Rs, there's going to be a set of bylaws. That's the laws under which the board operates. There's going to be the rules and regulations. That's very important. You want to know what rules you're signing up for. If you don't know the rules and it's permit parking only and you don't have your permit, your car could be towed. It's very important. What else is included? The financial statement for the association. How solid is that organization, and also their insurance policy. You want to see that they are fully covered with an umbrella policy. So if nothing else, encourage your buyer to look at these. You might want to make a cursory review of them yourself so that you can alert them as to any, unusual restrictions or conditions or covenants. And especially the rules, if you want to find out like from the get-go when they first close the escrow, what are they going to need to know? But really their responsibility is on the buyer. So we just have to be sure and encourage them to please read those. Okay, so typically since it's the seller's responsibility to provide these to the buyer, the seller will pay for those. And as you can see here, it just says the seller will pay for those. Now, sometimes when a buyer is getting their loan for a condominium, they will need the HOA to certify in other words, provide certain information to the lender as far as the condominium, the ratio of owners to renters, any deferred maintenance on the property. I'm trying to remember the kind of questions they ask. Just things like that. Now, the certification fee, that's going to be the buyer's responsibility to pay that. And that's paid directly to the association so that they will provide that information to your lender. Okay. Now, HOA transfer fees, that is a negotiable item. That can be paid by either the buyer or the seller. Now, it is typical that the seller would pay it, but that doesn't always mean they have to. So it says here, unless otherwise agreed, seller shall pay for separate HOA move out fees and buyer shall pay for separate move in fee. Applies if separately billed or itemized with the cost in transfer fee. Some HOAs might have the buyer side and the seller side, and some may not. So that's just something you'll need to look into, and decide who's going to cover that cost. That cost is anywhere between $200, $300, $400, something like that. All right. I have never run into this next item, private transfer fees, but it doesn't mean they don't exist, obviously. If you're in a particular community that has a private transfer fee, then you'll definitely want to decide who's going to pay that. And if there is a private transfer fee, it should be called out in the listing. It's not something that will sneak up on you. You're going to know it ahead of time. Okay, next items. You'll see 2 items here where you get to put in the fees that that you want to determine who's going to pay. If you don't have any additional items, then just simply leave those blank. But this is where you would put, let's say you were getting a termite inspection and you would like the seller to pay for that. Then you would put termite inspection fees or costs and then check seller. Now, with a termite, there's kind of 2 separate issues here. You can have the termite inspection, which is one cost, but then there's the cost of the termite corrections. Let's say the property comes back, the report comes back and it says this property needs to be tented. Well, who's going to pay that cost? So you can actually call it out in your offer, and you can put here on the second item cost to for the certification of the termite. What do they call that? Termite clearance, cost of the clearance. So to provide the clearance, they would need to make the correction. So you could actually put that here, check the seller box, and that would mean that you would have, and maybe the buyer pays for the, the inspection, and then the seller pays for any corrections that need to be made. Also negotiated item, if you want to strengthen your offer, of course, the buyer pays for more. If you're in a market where the buyer already has a lot of power, then you might check the seller box. But I gave you the commonly, what happens commonly so that you know that. All right, the next section, home warranty plan chosen by buyer. Coverage includes, but is not limited to. Now, when you're picking your home warranty package, it's really important to spend a little bit of time researching the different plans available. And if I were you, I'd go to their website, print out the brochure for several different home warranty companies so that you can show your buyer the different plans, the different costs, the different types of coverages, and allow them to choose the plan that they want based on the coverage that they would get. Because then when escrow closes and they call their home warranty company, it's not going to be a shock or a surprise to find out that certain items are only covered at certain levels, or some things may not be covered at all. So allowing them to choose their plan is probably the very best way you can go. If they say they don't care or you pick it for them, really try and put that back on them, because it could really cause some problems if they have an air conditioner go out. That's a pretty expensive repair. and they find out, oh, wow, we didn't get that coverage, and it's just really, it could be an uncomfortable situation if you don't let them choose it. And it really does here in the offer. It allows you to put, who the provider is, what the cost of it is, and what type of coverage it is. So if you're getting like platinum from this company, it's going to be real easy to order that. And a lot of times, the TC is going to be doing this type of thing, the transaction coordinator. So the more information, the more detailed you get in this section, it's going to make it easier for that person to place the order and get that taken care of for you. If this is pretty ambiguous and you're leaving it up to your transaction coordinator to choose the plan, that's not really fair to them and you or your buyer, because your buyer's not going to know what they're going to get. Okay. And then the last section here, other terms. If you have some other terms, let me give you an example of another term. Hang on. Let's say, okay, I made an offer on a property this past week. The property it was 4 acres and it had probably, I would say 18 cars laying around. It had 2 boats laying around, um, cement blocks, wood, just general construction debris and personal property that, it has I doubt any of those cars ran, and they're just needed to be hauled away. But the offer that we placed was, hey, we'll take care of this stuff for you. All you have to do is move out. And in exchange, we're making a little bit lower priced offer. So to articulate that in the other terms is a very good way to let them know, hey, our offer's lower, but we're also willing to take on a lot of the cleanup that you won't have to do. And you can put that in this other terms section. Now, if it is a financial other term, then you want to save that for the other terms in your financing section. And I believe that's, yeah, up here. So if there's additional finance terms, you want to put those here. But if it's additional general terms, then they're going to go down here. Okay. All right. We are rolling into the end of the RPA. Okay, this next section is property addenda and advisories. Depending on your offer, depending on the situation, depending on the listing, you may need additional addenda or advisories based on the statutory regulations. So you'll just simply read through these and check the ones that apply to your particular situation. The first one is tenant occupied property addendum. Well, you would want to include that if the property you're placing an offer on has a tenant. It's going to be necessary that you include this addendum. So you're going to check that if that applies. If the property is a probate sale, then you want to check probate. If it's a manufactured home, you'll want to check manufactured home. Now, every time you check a box, Zip Forms is very smart. It's going to add that form to your transaction for you. So all you'll have to do once you're done with this form and you saved it is look in your Zip Forms file that you created for this property or this transaction and see the additional addenda or advisories and go ahead, complete those and set them up for signature as well. So that when your buyer signs the offer, they're also going to be signing all the addenda, all the additional documents that you need for this transaction. So it really makes it very convenient. It takes a lot of the guesswork off of you, and it shouldn't be guesswork, of course, but it takes a lot of the the other responsibilities off your plate because it's going to automatically do that for you. Tenancy in common purchase addendum, stock cooperative purchase addendum. And remember, I explained what a co-op is. Mixed use purchase addendum. And then there's this box that says other. So if you know of another addenda that needs to be included, you can simply check the box and type it in. Now, when you type it in, Zip Forms may not necessarily know which addenda to add, so you'll have to add it yourself. Other addenda. Let's say you need just a general addendum number 1, then you can add addendum number 1 to this transaction. Now, why would you need an addendum number 1? Let's say there are extenuating circumstances that you want to add to this offer, but it's kind of long to include in any one of these little spaces, then you can add an addendum to this offer that becomes part of the offer. An example might be, let me think of an example. Wow, I can't think of any examples. Let me think about it and I'll try and come up with something. Okay, if it's a short sale, you want to add that addendum. Court confirmation addendum, that's has to do with a probate sale. And if it's a probate sale, then you want to add this court confirmation addendum if it has not been confirmed by the courts as of the time you make the offer. Septic well, property monument, and propane addendum. If your property that you're making an offer on has a septic, a well, property monument, or propane, you'll want to use this addendum. And that is where you ask for the septic certification, the well certification, pumping the septic, those sorts of things. All right, buyer intent to exchange addendum. So if the buyer is doing a 1031 exchange, your buyer will definitely want to include that addendum. Seller intent to exchange addendum. Oh, there's a buyer intent and a seller intent. So either one could be doing a 1031 exchange. If either one are, you definitely want to include those addendum. And then we have 2 more others. Okay. The next section, buyer and seller advisories. Now, these are a little bit different. These are just documents that advise your client or the seller on different conditions. Okay. And if you notice, what these 4 are already checked. And as luck would have it, these 4 are included in the offer packet that when we chose RPA, this form came as a form packet. And these 4 are actually already checked and are already included because these need to be included in every offer. So they're just saving you that work of checking the boxes and have done it for you. Okay. Now, your seller should know that, or you should know when you're making an offer if you're near a wildfire disaster area. If you're in the mountains or somewhere where, it's easy to see that there could be, a wildfire. So you want to just check this box, make sure that your buyer is advised of the what it means to be in a wildfire hazard zone. Trust advisory, if either one are either putting the property into a trust or it's coming out of a trust, you'll want to include that. Real estate owned advisory, if you're buying an REO property, you want to include that advisory. It's just additional information for your buyer, just to let them know what it means to be, have this condition. Statewide buyer and seller advisory. I include this one all the time. It's a pretty long document, but it really breaks down the transaction into bite-sized chunks, and it tells your buyer what their rights and their responsibilities are, what your, you as the agent, your rights and responsibilities, the seller's rights and responsibilities, and it really breaks it down and gives them some good definitions, it's just a good document. I feel like it's the table of contents to your transaction. So I like to include that one. Short sale information advisory. Of course, you'd use that if it were a short sale. Same with probate. And these are just advisories. It's just additional information for your buyer to, let them know what to expect and what certain things mean. All right. You are out of the section where you will be completing any more little check boxes or lines. So this section here, you'll want to read through. I recommend that anytime you complete an offer, that you read through it before you ask your buyer to sign it. So read through. This gives you a lot of good information. And even though you've read it before, you're reading it in the context of this particular transaction. So you're going to pick up on different things than you did the last time you read it, because when you read it last time, it was in the context of that transaction. So you'll want to read it each and every time, just so that you're very familiar, because your buyer is going to have questions. And if you've just read it, it's going to be much more readily available. Okay, so keep scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. Wow, we're going to end right on time. And we got through the second half very smoothly. I'm very happy. Okay, so we're going to get to the bottom. All right. These offers, the default expiration is on the third day. This offer shall be deemed revoked, and the deposit, if any, shall be returned to buyer unless by the date and time specified in paragraph 3C, the offer is signed by seller and a copy of the signed offer is delivered to buyer or buyer's authorized agent. Seller has no obligation to respond to an offer made. So the time period in 3C defaults to 3 days. If this is not signed and returned in that time frame, it will be deemed revoked. And if they made a deposit, it'll be returned. So that if you're making a lot of offers with your buyer, this kind of gives you a time frame to work with. You can wait the 3 days. If they didn't respond, move on. You can keep moving fairly quickly that way. You can also change the time frame in 3C to be whatever you want. You can make it 1 day. If your offer is really good, then make it 1 day. Entity buyers, note, if this paragraph is completed, a representative capacity signature disclosure, this form here, is not required for the legally authorized signers designated below. So what they're saying is, if you complete the section, you don't need to add the RCSD. What does that mean? If your buyers are buying it on behalf of a trust, a corporation, an LLC, or anything like that, a company, then they're an entity buyer. They're a buyer that is an entity. So if you check this box and complete this section here, then you don't need the RCSD. So that's a nice little change from the last one. You're going to put your buyer's names here, and also their printed name right here. And if there are more than 2 signers, you're going to check this box. If you check this box, this Zip Forms is going to add Form ASA, and that's the additional signature addendum. And that's going to have the additional boxes for you to put the 3rd and 4th buyer. It actually has 3 more spaces I believe, but at least 4. All right. So that's it for you, except for filling in, your broker information here. But if you've done the MLS Connect and you filled out your profile in zip forms, this should be auto filled. Okay. It also has a little box here, designated electronic delivery addresses. Check all that apply. You can add email, text to a phone number, or an alternate number. So this is a new section as well. All right, and then your addendums. Don't forget to fill out all your addendums that were included, and your offer is good to go. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, I'll get rid of that. All right, and our training is done for the day. Thank you all for attending. I hope you got something out of this. If you have any questions, please send them to me at you can just go to our website at calcurbs.com and leave a comment in our comment section. Okay, thank you so much, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.